Friend saved me from my coworker's attempted assault, only to find out years later it was my boyfriend who orchestrated it all. 5 years ago, when I was 23, I had been working with a company that handled hospitality training and stuff like that. What we did really wasn't important, but at that point I had been with the company for about 3 years already. Mark had gotten hired around the same time as I had, and we did a lot of training and stuff together, got put in the same call center group, and all around just became extremely close friends that hung out after work since we lived close to each other and were both unattached. To point out how close we had gotten, since we were both single, folks in the company and our department always made jokes that we needed to just say screw the company policies and start dating. We always laughed it off because at the end of the day we both had made it abundantly clear to each other that we only saw each other as friends. For what it's worth, I don't remember how the conversation came up, but it had, and it was just a strictly platonic relationship. So yeah, we were basically attached at the hip for about 2.5 years when I met Paul, at the time 29/M and currently 34/M, and began dating him. Paul and Mark got along somewhat fine at first, but a few months into dating Paul started to get upset if I said I was going to grab dinner with Mark after work, even if Paul was working at the time since he had his own long hours. For what it was worth, Mark seemed to understand where Paul was coming from and only grabbed dinner with me when I asked him, never prompting it himself. Well, on my 24th birthday I decided to throw a party at my apartment, and when Paul flaked on helping me get supplies, Mark stepped in and helped, even going out and buying the lion's share of the booze for the party. The party got going and Paul ended up showing up an hour after most of the others were there. After a few hours, most of the people started heading out, leaving a few people sleeping in the living room because they were too drunk to drive, and then Mark, Paul, and myself. Mark insisted I go lay down since it was my birthday, and he knew I was already pretty drunk myself, so it wasn't right for me to clean up after my own party. So I said good night to everyone and Paul helped me back to the room. Like I said, I was pretty drunk, and while I remember the night I also remember being very off my normal composure. He put me in bed on my side facing the wall and then left, and I pretty quickly dozed off. The next thing I remember is loud music blaring in the room and feeling completely bound. I was still inebriated, but as I tried to move around I could feel I was tied to the bed and could feel someone on top of me. I was laying on my stomach and there was a hand on the back of my head pushing it into the pillow so I couldn't see anything, and I could feel someone stumbling to try and pull my pajamas down, and shoving his hand up against me. Someone was pounding at the door until I heard a loud crack and then Mark and Paul's voices arguing. The pressure pulled off my head and I could see the one of them pulling the other away, but in the darkness I couldn't tell who was doing what, but there was a lot of screaming and crashing. A few minutes later Paul comes back in the room and unties me from the bed and just holds me, telling me Mark had been trying to rape me. I wanted to file a police report, but Paul convinced me not to since he had gotten there in time and nothing had happened, which I should have taken as a red flag, but I just didn't at the time because I was so relieved that I had been saved. I took a few days off from work, blocked Mark on all social media, but not before he texted me trying to tell me that Paul had been the one to attack me and that he was the one that saved me. I didn't believe him because it had been Paul that came in and untied me though, and if Paul had been trying, then why would he do that? Plus we were dating and it just didn't make any sense to me, so I thought Mark had just snapped or something. I ended up quitting from the company before my time off ended because I had been starting to look at advancement in my career and moving on, so I just decided that was my sign and tried to run away from it all. Paul and I kept dating for about 6 months after that until I caught him cheating on me with a lady from his office. Maybe this should have been a bigger red flag to me too, but I had been trying to distance myself from what had happened. Then life just went on. I got comfortable in my new job, stayed away from getting too friendly with anyone from work, and have never had a close guy friend again. Occasionally I'd see Mark at the grocery store or around town. Like I said, we had lived close to each other and neither of us moved, and I never felt the need to since he kept his distance from me completely, and I thought I was mostly over what had happened half a decade ago until I get a notification a few hours ago that Paul had messaged me. I thought that was odd cause I had blocked him. He made a new account, but I opened the message up anyway because of curiosity. I don't want to share the whole message because there's a lot of personal details in it, so I'm going to just hit the important details. So according to him, Paul is an alcoholic and has been for years. Even back when we first started dating he pretty much was always drinking something or looking for an excuse. He got fired from his job for showing up to work drunk and assaulting the receptionist by trying to force his tongue down her throat in the front lobby. At 9 a.m., he was in court-mandated AA, and as part of his recovery he was trying to make amends with anyone he has wronged because of his habit. And finally, Mark never tried to rape me. It was him. He had been jealous of my friendship with Mark and saw an opportunity to get him out of the picture because of how gullible I was. His words. I'm not going to lie, I threw up after reading the whole thing. He had so much detail behind all of it that I just felt sick to my stomach that he not only remembered everything, from how he had secretly put ties on my bed before I even went to sleep once he saw how drunk I was getting, to how he beat the shit out of Mark and threatened to kill him if he went to the cops. I know it's not a healthy reaction, but I've been drinking a bit since all of that message hit my inbox, trying to decide what to do. I know I need to call my therapist to talk about all of this, but my mind keeps going back to Mark and how betrayed he must have felt over it all. I even unblocked him on all my social media. He never blocked me, so his profiles popped back up pretty quickly, and I've been trying to decide if I should message him or not. I know logically that Paul should be the one messaging him as a part of his AA stuff, but I'm also pretty sure that Mark did block him since Paul mentioned not being able to find him on social media, but he also might not have remembered Mark's last name either, so it might be hard to find him. A close friend of mine answered her phone and is swinging by to spend the night with me here just so I have a shoulder to cry on, because I could just use a good cry right now. I'm going to leave Mark alone for now while I get my thoughts in order, but I'll probably send him a message in a few days once I can talk to my therapist. I did put the wine away. It's not helpful right now and I don't want to make the wrong decision and message Mark strictly on a somewhat drunk impulse. Update 1: I went to bed last night after putting the wine away when my friend got here and woke up to so many comments and PMs that I can't quite get back to everyone without being repetitive, so I want to just answer a few common things I've been messaged or seen. In a comment I mentioned I have told a handful of friends. To be specific, I told 3 plus my therapist. I didn't have a whole lot of close friends back then and wasn't a part of a big friend group either. That said, one of those 3 were here with me last night after I got a hold of her and she's every bit as disgusted as pretty much everyone else. I can't say for sure if any of them told anyone, and honestly given the passing of time I wouldn't expect them to have the same crystal clear image of who they might have told. But I do understand this might have spread without me knowing. I am looking into statute of limitations and reporting in my state here. From everything I have read over coffee this morning, I believe it hasn't passed, and as several have mentioned, he literally gave me a written confession. As for how I didn't realize Paul was an alcoholic? Well, I don't have a good answer for that. I'm going mostly based on his message that told me he was always drinking even back then. We weren't living together, and as I mentioned there were plenty of days that I didn't see him versus when I did, and I don't even know now if he was even working late all the times he told me he was. I have texted my therapist and am waiting for a reply now. I'm hopeful she has some time this afternoon or tomorrow that I can speak with her, but my friend is staying with me until I can speak with her just so that I don't have to be alone right now, and I can't say just how much I appreciate it. Update 2: I would like to start this off by first saying I haven't gone back to the wine, though I did super desperately want to yesterday. I haven't really been much of a drinker since that night 5 years ago and last week when I learned the disgusting truth about Paul. To those of you hoping I would file a police report, I did. I spoke with my therapist at length the Monday following my post, and she was shocked but extremely helpful in helping me process everything, and she spent some time last what should have been the end of our video appointment looking up the statute of limitation laws in my state. There are none for sex crimes, and while she warned me that my report might just be added to a pile of other charges Paul could possibly have against him given that he was assigned court-mandated AA. All the same, I filed a report with screenshots of his messages to me printed and attached. I'm not sure what to expect from that, and at the end of the day I hope he has an absolute shit life if it goes nowhere. Now, as for Mark. My therapist was insistent that I at the very least write him something, whether it be a letter to mail him or a message on Facebook. He never reached out to me after I unblocked him, but given what he thought I thought of him, I think it's understandable. She, like many of you, pointed out that while he knew he was innocent, the thought of someone believing him capable of something monstrous like that could have weighed on him for all this time, and even if his reception of my message wasn't ideal, he deserved at least the closure that this new turn of events could provide. I took a few days writing and rewriting a message in Notepad. I didn't want to accidentally hit send before I had the wording right, and each time I sat down to write it I felt like I came up short even though the message just got longer and longer. Again, I didn't think just saying, "Oh, guess what, I learned Paul is an absolute psychopath last week," surprise, would have been super appropriate either, but I wanted to find the right balance. Here's the message I ended up sending him. "Hi Mark, so this is a bit out of the blue and I really don't know how to start this, so I'm just going to put it out there. I'm sorry for not listening to you. Paul messaged me last week and revealed everything and I'm just sorry. This isn't easy to write and you deserve so much more than just an apology so long after the fact. There's no excuse for me not giving you the benefit of the doubt other than I let myself be stupidly gaslighted by a psychopathic maniac." Screenshot of his confession to me. Is the message he sent me. It even confesses to an assault on you in the event that you'd like to press charges against him, as I have already filed a police report for what he did to me. If you would like to talk about any of this at all, my inbox is open. If you want to tell me to fuck off, well, I guess I understand that too. I'm not sure what I expect really, because this has ripped open a wound I had been trying to heal, and I'm sure this might cause you some distress, but I felt you at the very least deserve to know. I know I probably could have said more, but any time I kept trying to write I felt like it was just me making excuses. I sent that to him this past Friday and I'm pretty sure he read it sometime between Friday and Saturday, as the read notification had been there when I checked Facebook again at lunch on Saturday. I had been out with my friend Jenny, who had stayed over with me after I learned the truth, and when I told her I had messaged Mark she wondered if he had responded, so I checked. Last night at about 6 p.m. my phone dinged, and while I thought it might have been a text from Jenny or maybe my mom, I don't really text or talk to a lot of people, I actually found that Mark had sent me a reply. "I wish you would have listened to me back then, but I'm glad you know the truth." I thought that was all he was going to send me when the 3 dots kept going across the bottom of my screen. He was still typing when he sent me pictures as well. They were graphic, and Paul's assertion that he had beat the shit out of Mark did in fact also come with documented proof from him in the form of pictures. Mark went on to explain that he filed an assault report the next day after my birthday, but that the police had warned him against accusing Paul of sexually assaulting me given the turn of events and my "don't speak to me again" text I sent him when he tried to explain himself. Nothing had ever come of his police report and he wasn't even sure why, neither am I, but he intended to follow up once more today. Mark is still very much the kind person I remember him being, and while I was bracing for him to hold a grudge against me, he instead just expressed his happiness that I finally knew the truth. We exchanged small talk through chat for a little while, but it was nowhere near the conversations we used to have. Mark is actually engaged to a girl he has been dating for about 2 years now. He had apparently never brought any of this up to her until she saw my name flash in his screen with the notification and asked who I was. While some of you expressed concern that my friends had smeared his name, he apparently never heard anything of it. He actually still works for the same company we had both been at, just now in a copywriting role for the marketing team, so at the very least the lack of a police report from me or making a scene at work worked out in his favor there. I asked if we could keep in touch, even if only with small talk, and he said that he thought that would be okay, though he was a lot busier than he was back then between work and planning his wedding. While I thought that was going to be the end of it, he messaged me a few hours ago to let me know he refiled his police report with the added messages I had sent him, and that if I'd be open to it, he'd like to meet for coffee with his fiancée in tow and a friend of mine if I felt more comfortable doing it that way. Not really sure if that's an entirely good idea, but I shot Jenny a text to see what she thinks and if she'd be open to coming with. She said it's ultimately up to me what I decide to do and she'd be with me either way, so yeah, that's the update for those of you who have reached out and asked. Update 3: over the last few months I started to get follow-up calls from an investigator that was apparently going over the details of Paul's case. He was already facing some time in prison over a different assault charge, his time in AA had proven not to be effective even with trying to make amends, and the prosecutor was looking to add my report of sexual assault to an overall criminal case against him, but it would require me to submit either a document to be provided as testimony, or to act as an in-person witness. Though I had received Paul's message, I hadn't interacted or seen him in person for well over 4 years, and my therapist suggested I might get some closure over testifying against him in court. This finally happened last week. It was hard, and I won't lie. I cried while I was on the stand, but it felt good. The years hadn't been kind to Paul, and while he certainly looked remorseful sitting in the courtroom, I could give two fucks about how this was going to affect him. I left after that and found out just this morning that between his various cases he's going to prison. I'm not sure how long, but I also know he is being added to the sex offender database, which is another win as far as I'm concerned. Other than that, life has been going pretty well. I've decided to throw myself into some new hobbies, another suggestion by my therapist, and have overall tried to just become the best version of myself as possible. My old friend Mark, who had taken the blame for Paul's actions for so long, got married in the middle of last year, and while he and his fiancée had offered me an invitation, I didn't feel like it was my place to attend. We hadn't been in contact for so long, and I didn't want to have anyone asking me questions on why I was there when I didn't really have any other friends attending the event. We message every so often, but he's got his own life, and it's not my place to intrude on that. I'm just happy that Paul's bullshit never got to derail his life in any huge way outside of the obvious. I'll probably never have reason to log back onto this account again, and really only did it today because I was just so overjoyed in hearing the results that it reminded me I had vented to you all so long ago now.